understand based on reports that at least the one in Illinois is actually on hold to wait for the disposition of this. But regardless of whether he's found guilty or not guilty, guilty of some charges and not guilty of others, he's going to be extradited.
Okay,
right
so
away,
not yet.
Illinois, to case charges there.
Oh, there. Okay, Illinois. Okay.
Cynthia, let me go to you for some final thoughts here. We should know that, I say final thoughts, this verdict could come in at any second, as Ron Allen rightfully noted. We don't know when
it ain't came in yet. I told y'all.
Just because again, we have no cameras inside. This is not a live televised trial. It's not been over the course of the last month or so since it's been going on.
They ain't said nothing yet.
We may find it out. We're obviously going to bring it to you live the second that we get it. But Cynthia,
I'm through with y'all. I'm not listening to y'all. I'm done. You know what? Y'all fired. Y'all are fired. No, they didn't, y'all. They didn't say anything. They didn't say nothing. I'm gonna kick y'all and y'all. I'm over here about to cry. I'm about to call people. And y'all Negroes got me. Oh my gosh. Has been convicted by a federal jury in New York of racketeering conspiracy involving sexual. Because somebody said, Jason, yeah, okay, I'm on the page. He faces decades in prison, story to come, but it's still no conviction. It's still no details, y'all. I'm through with y'all. Y'all fired. Y'all, you know what? We need to go to Timberly Palmer Twitter page. Okay, I'm gonna go there. I'm not gonna go nowhere. Okay? I'm through with y'all. Y'all don't love me. Y'all be trying to have me look crazy out here. I mean, he gonna be guilty. We already know. Okay, so it says breaking. R. Kelly guilty of racketeering after 9 hours of deliberations. The judge announces a verdict just around 3 p.m. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Come on now. What we doing? I'm trying to eat my food. Let me know something. My food getting cold. It's your girl tiffanymdraper, and my DoorDash just got here. And I was going to watch Family Guy like I usually do when I eat. But Drake, guilty. I see everybody saying he didn't been found guilty. So
West Virginia versus Andrew McCulley. They have just returned to court. Just a reminder, the person testifying is the minor.
Y'all fired. I'm gonna fire y'all.
The person testifying is a minor. Look, you about to say.
All right, yeah, that's what I'm reading. Yeah. Okay, I read from Emily that. Okay, he's guilty, y'all. Okay, so we can praise. Okay, it says the jury is going through the rest of the verdict sheet now. If found guilty of everything, he could serve between 10 years and life. Okay. Let me see. Let me, y'all. Let's figure this out. We got it. Hold on.
Let me know something.
Hold on. Because Core TV over here.
Core TV bush. All right, let me get back over here so I can talk to the people. So anyway, y'all, from what I'm hearing, let's go to another somebody because they. Okay, so R. Kelly verdict, we're going to put today. I don't know what y'all feel about this because quiet as his mother freaking kept. Everybody saying, you know what? 56 minutes ago. Let me see.
The way that I use drop.
Ads. There we go. Let me not trip on ads. Let me not trip.
begun in the R. Kelly trial as the disgraced singer faces racketeering and sex trafficking charges. The prosecution saying he used lies, manipulation, threats, and physical abuse to dominate his victims, and he used his money and his public persona to hide his crimes in plain sight. Kelly denies the charges, his defense arguing the government allowed witnesses to lie, saying many of them accusing Kelly of sexual and physical abuse were in consensual relationships with the singer and are now trying to monetize their testimonies. Let's bring in host and legal analyst at Law and Crime Network, Terry Austin, for more on a trial that a lot of people are paying attention to. Good to see you.
It's good to see you too, Kira. Thank you.
All right. So the jury deliberated for hours on Friday before the case was adjourned until today, and they have not yet reached a verdict. So we also know that the jury asked for evidence related to one of the witnesses. So what factors is the jury considering right now? And what?
First of all, he did it like OJ.
Are some of the standout parts from the trial so far likely to stick out to them?
I think everybody is watching to see what these questions are going to be about. The first question, as you correctly point out, was about one of the victims. Sonia was her name. And that victim actually testified that she was sexually assaulted by him, and she testified that she was locked up and that he abused her, and she was afraid to talk about it before. She said that she ate something, she felt faint, and I think that the jury wants to determine why she didn't come out before this, because it happened years ago, and also whether or not she could actually escape. They asked for the floor plan of the studio where she was being kept. So I think they are very careful looking at all 11 of the victims, 9 of whom.
Exactly. What's the floor plan? I'm gonna need to know some details. Does his dick got a bump on it? Like, let us know.
Women to were men, and they are really trying to determine whether or not this was consensual or whether or not this was rape or something against the will of these women.
So, Terry, you may remember earlier this month, Kelly's executive assistant of 16 years, Diana Copeland, spoke out about what she says she saw inside Kelly's homes, including live-in girlfriends. How do you think that her testimony impacted this case and will continue to impact the case?
I think someone who is working so closely with Kelly, who is his executive assistant, who has seen him every day while she was working for him, has an impact on the jury. They are going to understand that she saw what was going on. Unlike the 5 witnesses that the defense put on, they didn't see anything that was going on behind closed doors. On the other hand, I thought she was a bit sort of even-handed. It was almost as though she wanted to say what the truth was in terms of what was going on behind closed doors. But on the other hand, she didn't really come out and say anything that was extremely damaging to him, as I think she could have been even more so. She also had some interviews that were outside of the courtroom. So I think the jury is looking at her as though she had an inside view and wondering whether or not things were as bad as she said, or actually could have even been worse when it was behind closed doors.
Well, and then you have this documentary series, Surviving R. Kelly, and it's featuring women giving very detailed accounts of the alleged sexual and mental abuse. How does this documentary series, as well as the public scrutiny of R. Kelly, play into all this as well?
You know, I think it's interesting because some of the jurors actually said they did not see Surviving R. Kelly, which is
I honestly hope y'all don't hear me smacking because the sister is hungry.
The documentary that we're talking about. But I think for the most part, everyone in the public has seen that, and everyone has heard all of these women who are talking about, all the way from the first witness who got on the stand, Jerronda Price, and
Where is the young lady that got peed on? Where's she at?
Pace, and she actually was in the documentary. And I think that they are seeing it's not just one, but it's multiple people. And when you have so many people saying the same thing,
He gonna have to have a sequel, Surviving Life in Prison. We got here.
Getting your paycheck up to
Make sure y'all hit that like button. I want to give you a slap on the wrist. No. But I want to know if y'all feel like he really did this or these ladies just trying to find a come up or something. No pun intended when I say come. So you got all these people out here. You got all these people out here waiting for the verdict. And, you know, according to them, one has already been reached. Come on, baby. You gonna play or not?
Would you ever?
You gonna play or not? Not bad, y'all. Gotta wait for this ad. So, like I said, I want to know what y'all think about this.
Know if this is how adults acted. Like I just didn't know.
He has this type of like intimidation right off the bat. I was just waiting for it to be over.
I think he gets some sort of satisfaction within himself, knowing that he's taking control over other people.
Put that music in my video. Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
I mean, my world ain't gonna come to an end.
See, here's the thing. A lot of people are letting him slide because of who he is. You know what I mean? So it's like they can't separate the singer from the sexual deviant. And I've heard a lot of people say they don't care. They just like his music. So I want to know if y'all one of them people. Do y'all feel like, oh, I'm still going to listen to his music and I don't care what y'all talking about? That don't mean, that don't mean nothing. We still trying to get, these people still ain't saying nothing. So,
R. Kelly's racketeering and sex trafficking trial is finally in the hands of the jury. After weeks of testimony, deliberations got underway this afternoon. We've got a lot to discuss now that we're officially on verdict watch, and we have our experts here to give us a breakdown of the charges, the deliberation process, and the emotional weight of this trial on the accusers and the jury. In over more than 4.5 weeks of testimony, prosecutors have tried to paint Kelly as a violent predator who spent years physically, emotionally, and sexually abusing women, girls, and boys. His lawyers have tried to portray the accusers as obsessed fans, liars, and opportunists. Here's what happened today. Prosecutors wrapped the rebuttal to the defense's closing arguments. That was followed by several hours of jury instructions from the judge. Deliberations officially got underway at 1:40 p.m. Eastern Time and stopped for the day around 5:30 p.m. The jury has now been sequestered with deliberations resuming on Monday. All right, let's get the discussion going with my panel of experts. Music critic and contributor for The New Yorker, Jim Derogatis, who's covered R. Kelly for decades, and veteran prosecutor and BNC's legal contributor, Paul Henderson, who's been with us covering this trial from the very start. All right, guys, before deliberations began, the prosecution responded to the defense's closing arguments. In his rebuttal, the assistant U.S. attorney said, quote, Kelly believed the music, the fame, and the credibility meant he could do whatever he wanted. Jim, you covered R. Kelly and his legal issues for decades, but this moment of reckoning feels different. Why?
Well, I think that the prosecution case with 45 witnesses and hundreds of pieces of evidence, it spans, they said 25 years in their closing argument, but victim number one was 1991. Tiffany So this is a case that is 30 years making. And, the tragedy is why it took so long for a court of law to listen to the almost exclusively women of color who were victimized by them.
Paul, why do you think this moment, or do you feel this moment is different?
I do think it's different. I think people are very much aware that there were charges earlier, decades ago, that R. Kelly beat, but we are not in the same place. I think it's very clear that R. Kelly used his celebrity inappropriately, and he used it in a way that made him a criminal, that made him a predator. And I feel like the prosecution really laid out a clear narrative that has spanned decades of continuing behavior where people were victimized, where people were treated badly, which was criminal behavior. And that's why we're here, and that's why we have this trial in front of us. I feel like they've done a decent job of presenting a pathway for the jury to find him guilty. And I appreciate that they talked about the history and the time span to put in context how long R. Kelly has been behaving in this way, not as a celebrity, but as a criminal.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so you talked about the prosecution laying out a clear case. Well, Paul, the jury started deliberating at 1:40 p.m. Eastern time today, and then hours later, they sent the judge requests for several exhibits. Any correspondence, Paul, from jurors after they've been given the case can be very telling. What can we glean from their notes to the court?
Well, let me just say that very telling is an understatement. It is the most stressful thing in the world when you get a note back from the jury about evidence that they want to see from the case you just presented. Especially in a case like this where you've spent weeks presenting tens and tens of victims and documents. What comes out can sometimes be very telling or not at all, but from the lawyer's perspective, it's a clutch your heart moment because you don't know what they're going to ask. And so in this case, where they were asking, I think one of the questions was for an overview of the layout.
That's what I'm saying, Michael. That's why it's pissing me off, because it's like women are notoriously known to do that. Say that they wasn't a willing participant so they can get some money.
Of the recording studio that they asked for, that could seem pretty innocuous, but it's difficult as one of the lawyers involved in the case not to try and read into it as to what that means. Are they trying to discover and see what people could have seen or known in that layout, what they knew or should have known from what was going on? Were they trying to evaluate the credibility of the victims that were saying that they were in specific rooms when specific criminal acts took place? There's no way to gauge that. I will say, though, it's not surprising to me that they have questions about some of the specifics of the testimony, given the volume of the testimony in a case like this, and given the timing, because it's difficult, I think, for a lay audience to digest all of the voir dire.
Look at this. Kelly's conviction represents a major Me Too movement for Black women. Kelly was found guilty of racketeering and 8 counts of sex trafficking. After decades of accusations, R. Kelly's music is rarely heard on the radio now. So this is from the New York Times. This is a credible source. This is a credible source. So yeah, there you have it, folks. Okay, we got CNN.
All of the jury instructions that are given to them at the conclusion of a case that seems separate from the narratives and the arguments from the lawyers.
Jim, throughout the trial, we saw the prosecution talk about how those in Kelly's inner circle helped Kelly run this criminal enterprise. You wrote a piece for the New Yorker this week titled, "Why is R. Kelly standing trial alone?" So why is he?
Well, this is the heart of the matter, and Paul, of course, is the expert. RICO, the racketeering laws, are really misunderstood in popular culture. I'm a guy from Jersey, I was thinking, if you indicted The Godfather, where's Tessio and Clemenza? But RICO in itself being named part of a criminal enterprise.
Sex trafficking is a serious issue too. And taking advantage of women is, but like I said, I don't know if I want to. Yeah, but sexual assault and all that, trafficking, that's just as serious as racketeering, if you ask me. But I'm just not convinced that all these women are victims.
Is not in itself a crime, but it allowed, in a canny, perhaps, strategy. If it backfires, it will have been a huge mistake. It allowed the prosecution to bring in crimes on which the statute of limitations had lapsed, crimes spanning 30 years, to throw out the names of these many enablers and assistants. There were literally dozens mentioned in testimony. There were a couple of key assistants who are indicted in the second federal case that Kelly faces in the Northern District of Illinois. It's entirely possible if they win a conviction, we'll see a slew of indictments of some.
I know he wish he could be stuck in the closet instead of in a jail cell.
These other people.
What's up, Mika?
If there's an acquittal, it may all go away. But Kelly still faces a second federal case, just like Harvey Weinstein faced two. One in New York, one in LA, and he faces a state case in Illinois and a state case in Minnesota.
So he isn't going anywhere. All right, Paul, let's talk about specifics.
The pettiness. So he isn't going anywhere.
These charges, 8 counts of violating the Mann Act, which prohibits sex trafficking across state lines, and 1 count of racketeering with 14 underlying acts and 6 Jane Does. Which counts look the strongest to you, and which are the weakest? Now, the jury wanted Sonia's testimony read back, so could that mean they could be undecided on the counts related to her?
I don't think so. They may be trying to drill down and focus on her testimony and be arguing amongst themselves as to what they thought was relevant. I think that testimony was more relevant rather than less, which is why they raised the question in the first place. To me, as a prosecutor, though, of course.
Xavier, you right. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised.
That is an indication that those are the charges that they're starting with that stood out to them, and that's not surprising. The narratives about young women and young men of color that were victimized allegedly by R. Kelly, and those narratives were some of the most powerful in this case. And so the fact that some of the first questions that they have were about that narrative is an indication to me that they found those testimonies to be more credible rather than not. And that would tend to lead us to surmise that they are likely to be moving towards the racketeering charges and the actions that took place on more than one occasion with some of those victims. But again, that's me reading the tea leaves about that question, and that's my lens of how I think the testimony went in and what I think the jury was paying attention to.
Jim, last question to you. Despite weeks of graphic and horrific testimony, people stood outside of the courthouse supporting R. Kelly. During the rebuttal, the government said of Kelly, quote, "He's not a genius. He's a criminal, a predator."
What's up, the Dome G? What up, Misha?
Dozens of supporters outside the courthouse still don't see it that
Clarissa,
way.
everybody.
What could a guilty verdict mean for Kelly, the music industry, and for women, specifically Black women?
Who cares about if we don't have R. Kelly, what's going to happen to the music industry? What? Who cares when it comes to that? Shoot, he ain't had no hits on the radio recently anyway.
Oh, well, we could talk for 2 hours about that. Listen, I'm a music journalist. I'm a music lover. I understand the power of I Believe I Can Fly playing at your kid's kindergarten graduation and Step in the Name of Love being played.
Yes, them parents are negligent. What about it?
And English remix powering every backyard barbecue and family gathering you ever had.
I know he gonna wish he had the key to the ignition and the key to his jail cell so he can motherfucking escape. Somebody gonna be sticking their key in his ignition.
In many ways, in the Black community, that music is yours as much as it is his. But to dismiss
the women who and yeah, Paul was right. There's two men. They're not charged specifically linked to charges against Kelly, but to dismiss the women.
What up, Coco?
Who are your daughters, your cousins, your aunties, your sisters. I don't know. From December 2000, the first story when I sat with a young woman who showed me the scars on her wrists where she tried to kill herself after sexual contact with Kelly that began when she was 15. I've never been able to stop bringing it back home to those victims. And I don't know how, no matter how much they love the music and no matter how many valid criticisms they have with the white justice system, I have a lot. I don't know how you can support this man with so much evidence against him.
Well, guess we'll just have to wait and see. I'll keep y'all updated.